Reuters shows that Republicans are now 6 points ahead of Democrats in the race for the U.S. Congress. A remarkable turnaround, given that they were once as much as 16 points behind. We are live. It is the May 22nd, edition of the Alex Jones Show, 4th hour, and huge headline just went up on INFOWARS.com, literally posted 1 minute ago. This is the back-end data from Reuters polling. No other news organization has reported on this, not even Reuters. It's in their back end, but they're not reporting on it as of yet. Headline, huge. Republicans now 6 points ahead in congressional poll. Blue wave turns into a drought. Polling by Reuters shows that Republicans are now 6 points ahead of Democrats in the race for the U.S. Congress. A remarkable turnaround, given that they were once as much as 16 points behind. And that was as recently as December, where in another CNN poll, Democrats were 16 points ahead. Now, according to the latest figures from Reuters, in which registered voters were asked, if the election for U.S. Congress were held today, would you vote for the Democratic candidate or the Republican candidate in your district where you live? The GOP comes out on top. 40.7% of respondents said they would vote for a Republican, with 34.5% saying they would vote for a Democrat. Now, if you go right to the end of that image on the right-hand side, you'll see that the lines have crossed. In the past week, the Democrats have sunk and the Republicans have taken over. The lines have crisscrossed for basically the first time since the 2016 election. Absolutely incredible polling figures. The Dilbert creator, Scott Adams, offers his wry commentary on the numbers. He says, on the plus side, Democrats still have 100% support from MS-13 and Iran. And, of course, from Palestinian terrorists, no doubt. But that's the very argument, isn't it? Nancy Pelosi, the lot of them, they threw their lot behind MS-13. Animals, who are animals. By the way, today, an MS-13 gang member who's literally nicknamed the Animal has been charged with murder, convicted 40 years in jail for murdering a 15-year-old boy. Nancy Pelosi was unavailable for comment whether he had a spark of divinity. We don't know yet. We're still waiting for word from Pelosi. But that's exactly it, isn't it? They've plummeted, they've cratered, they've collapsed. And now in a generic poll for the US Congress, Republicans are more than 6 points ahead, which is marginally, I think, outside the margin of error. Of course, we had a CNN poll, I think it was last week, where the margin of error had become so close that it was basically a toss-up. Again, after Democrats being 16 points ahead as recently as December. Now Republicans are 6+ points ahead, according to the latest figures out of Reuters. And now it's not just the MS-13 situation, the Iran situation. It's obviously because of the economy. Nearly 2 out of 3 Americans polled by CBS this week say the economy is either very good or somewhat good. And that's what it's all about. It's going to be the primary issue as we move towards the midterms. Republicans now are whopping, given that how far they were behind, 6 points ahead of Democrats in this congressional poll. Absolutely huge. I'm going to send that article to Drudge in the next break here and see if he'll link to that, because, again, you'll only find it on INFOWARS as of right now. Talking of ratings and polls, CNN's Jake Tapper has basically lost 32% of his audience in 1 year. This is out of Breitbart. CNN's Jake Tapper has lost nearly a third of his audience. Throughout all of May last year, CNN's Jake Tapper averaged 1.091 million total viewers and 304,000 viewers in the advertiser-coveted 25 to 54 age demo, which is, by the way, is the predominant demo of my YouTube channel that CNN's tried to shut down the Alex Jones channel. So far this year, though, through the 16th of May, those numbers have cratered by nearly a third. Now, bear in mind that CNN as a whole has also lost 30% of its audience in the past year. Tapper's demo viewers have sunk to an average of just 206,000, a 32% decline. his total views collapsed to just 785,000, 28% fall. Now, that was according to CNN's own press release. As of last year, he's lost 32% from May 20. Fox News and even MSNBC. So you see, what's happened is the Trump derangement syndrome market, which was, you know, let's be honest, a fire last year, this time last year, everybody was all into their Trump derangement syndrome on the left. As that kind of created an interest, as every new headline, every new drama, every new bombshell didn't lead to the impeachment of Donald Trump, as they all foolishly thought it would, people began to get jaded. So that coalesced basically into MSNBC, obviously the most hysterical left-wing network on the air, although CNN's running it pretty close. So MSNBC is still not doing too bad, but CNN has plummeted. Of course, that ties into how Trump's basically declared war on them, how they've become the totem pole of left-wing anti-Trump hysteria. Article continues, Tapper's rating woes are in part tied to the fake news albatross. That is the far left CNN. CNN's well-documented and ongoing credibility problems have devastated the anti-Trump channel's ratings, which have already collapsed by some 30% this month. Nevertheless, Tapper has suffered from some credibility scandals of his own, including his self-destructive refusal to separate himself from the sinking ship that is CNN. Because, of course, before he joined CNN, Jake Tapper was seen as, you know, somewhat of a centrist. He did a lot of great work on the whole surveillance issue back during the Edward Snowden days when he worked for ABC News. So Jake Tapper had this kind of perceived credibility, even though he was within the mainstream media. He was seen as something of an outlier, not part of the establishment. Since the 2016 election, where, of course, he was tied in to the Clinton campaign quite intimately, going to the dinners, going to the behind-the-scenes events, now he's basically joined the chorus of Trump derangement syndrome on CNN, and it's cost him in viewing figures. But MSNBC, as this article points out, is pummeling CNN. Reads, MSNBC might be every bit as dedicated to the left-wing cause as CNN, but with hosts like Rachel Maddow, Chris Matthews, Ari Melber, Chris Hayes, and Joy Reid, MSNBC is at least interesting, mainly because several of those people are completely out of their gourd, Joy Reid in particular, and of course Rachel Maddow. And at times will even surprise you. CNN is as humorless, programmed, and pedantic as a day spent at a socialist summer camp. Not only that, it has, again, the most virulent Trump derangement syndrome imaginable. There was a story today up on the Drudge Report where it was, I think it was a Harvard professor, headline Harvard professor, Lawrence Tribe warns Dems pushing Trump impeachment, you have to shoot to kill. Now, bearing in mind, this arrives a few days after some anti-Trump lunatic who was shouting anti-Trump slogans tried to shoot up a hotel in Florida. You remember that story. Now he's been charged. It also comes less than a year after James T. Hodgkinson, a far-left Bernie Sanders supporter, tried to massacre a large group of congressional lawmakers at a baseball practice. Now we have a Harvard law professor talking within the context of impeaching Trump, but saying, quote, if you're going to shoot him, you have to shoot to kill. Now, is that really the kind of rhetoric that we need, given these hyper-partisan times, given the fact that we've had fringe extremists on both the left and the right actually try to shoot to kill on a regular basis? Are those words appropriate for CNN? Well, he hasn't come out and clarified it. Obviously, he was talking about the context of impeaching Trump. He's not literally talking about shooting to kill Trump. But again, are those words really appropriate given the hyper-partisan, fringe extremist hysteria times that we live in? Probably not. Probably not. But he wasn't called out for it on CNN.
You know,
what is absolutely true is that since January of this year, you've changed your modus operandi, you've changed your algorithms, and it has led directly to a very substantial drop in views and engagements for those that have got right of centre political opinions. The facts are very clear. Just look at President Trump's numbers on a much smaller scale. Look at mine. Look at thousands of other conservative commentators. And on average, we're down about 25% over the course of this year. And, you know, that's happening on a platform for all ideas. I'm not talking here, Mr. Zuckerberg, about extremism. I'm not talking about encouraging violence. I'm not talking about hatred of anybody. I'm talking about people who have majority mainstream opinions. And frankly, what interests me is who decides what is acceptable. Who are these people you referred to earlier, these third-party fact-checkers? Who are these people? I mean, why is there no transparency in this process at all?
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
We're live to the fourth hour of the Alex Jones Show. Before we go to a clip from Nigel Farage, who basically had the opportunity to grill Mark Zuckerberg in the European Parliament today, although he waited until the end to answer all the questions, so there was no back and forth. It was all staged, but we're going to get to that clip in a second. First, I want to tell you about some of the great products at InfoWarsStore.com because we need your support now in the products today. Now, Nigel Farage had the opportunity, and I helped with a bit of the research for this behind the scenes, to grill Mark Zuckerberg about Facebook's algorithmic censorship of conservative content. Now, we know across the board that some conservative commentators, some conservative news outlets on Facebook have been completely decimated by this algorithmic change, which happened basically at the end of January. In 1 week alone, I talked about this last time I was on the show, I lost 80% shares on Facebook engagement in 1 week alone. So they probably dialed it up even further now since February. The studies show that, I think Farage talks about an average of a 25% drop amongst conservative commentators and news outlets on Facebook. He had the opportunity to ask Zuckerberg about it today. We've got the clip, and here.
Followers in terms of engagement, so I'm your best client here in the room. I've no idea of the value of that, but I'm pleased to see you, as I hope you are me. The one slight problem I have, and I'm watching very carefully the testimony that you gave on Capitol Hill. Time and again, people asked you, is this genuinely a neutral political platform? And you come up with the same line again and again. It's well crafted. You say that Facebook is a platform for all ideas. Now, historically, of course, it's true that through Facebook and other forms of social media, there is no way that Brexit or Trump or the Italian elections could ever possibly have happened. It was social media that allowed people to get round the back of mainstream media. Now, perhaps you're horrified by this creation of yours and what it's led to. I don't know. But what is absolutely true is that since January of this year, you've changed your modus operandi, you've changed your algorithms, and it has led directly to a very substantial drop in views and engagements for those that have got right of centre political opinions. The facts are very clear. Just look at President Trump's numbers on a much smaller scale. Look at mine. Look at thousands of other conservative commentators. And on average, we're down about 25% over the course of this year. And, that's happening on a platform for all ideas. I'm not talking here, Mr. Zuckerberg, about extremism. I'm not talking about encouraging violence. I'm not talking about hatred of anybody. I'm talking about people who have majority mainstream opinions. And frankly, what interests me is who decides what is acceptable. Who are these people you referred to earlier, these third-party fact-checkers? Who are these people? I mean, why is there no transparency in this process at all? I'm not generally somebody that calls for legislation on the international stage, but I'm beginning to wonder whether we need a social media Bill of Rights to basically protect free speech. And I'm asking you today very, very clearly that would you accept that today Facebook is not a platform for all ideas that is operated impartially?
So that was Nigel Farage basically grilling Mark Zuckerberg, the Facebook CEO, in the European Parliament today. He took all the questions in a row. A very, very bizarre way of doing it. Obviously designed so there would be no back and forth whatsoever between the people asking the questions and Zuckerberg himself. For half of it, somebody else was speaking on his behalf. So then he waited until the end of all the questions before answering any of them. Now, I haven't seen his response in full, but from what people have said, it's just the usual denial that there's any, deliberate targeting of conservatives. Basically him saying, oh, that the algorithm change was simply to boost trustworthy websites. The trustworthy websites just happen to be all establishment media websites just by new trust algorithm will prevent INFOWARS and Breitbart gaming the system. Literally 1 week later, we were decimated along with a lot of other conservative pages in terms of engagement, in terms of shares on Facebook. That happened at the end of January. Breitbart reported 1st of May. Facebook is now ranking news organizations based on trustworthiness. So they take a URL and they relegate it before you even post it, basically, which is why INFOWARS articles I used to share on Facebook would get as many shares, depending on the interest in the article in the subject, as any other link I would post on Facebook. Now, I mean, I could post an INFOWARS link and it'll get 10, 15 shares. Bearing in mind, on my 2 profiles alone, it's a potential audience of 1 million people. You can still post something else. You can post a meme on Facebook. Obviously, they've got no way of tracking that yet as to the political bias of the meme or whatever, and that'll get 3, 4, 5, 10,000 shares. So they've entered URLs into some kind of flagging database. Infowars.com is one of them, definitely. They've also got these fake fact checkers. It's Snopes.com. It's the usual suspects, been proven over and over again to be vehemently partisan. They're not independent. They're not impartial. This is a deliberate attempt to influence people in their voting habits as we approach the midterms. It's very transparently so. This is the Alex Jones